Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphanlast, aka Skylar Madison, and welcome to the Draconian Rain collaboration, where she's gone ahead and drawn this super imaginative mermaid. It's a jellyfish mermaid. Pretty cool. Very imaginative. I really like this idea, and it kind of gets me to think what other sorts of inventive ideas she might have. It kind of gets me to think of weird fantasy stories. I mean, fantasy is not my favorite genre in the world, but I'm not 100% opposed to it. But yeah, like this is pretty cool. Now, I decided to color this image with Affinity Designer, primarily because you have a lot of versatility with the colors. Like if I decided that I didn't want something to be a particular color, I could change that color at any point in time. And so that's the main goal with using Affinity Designer. Also, I didn't really want to color this with Affinity Photo primarily because the brush tool has like 5 or 6 different versions to it, and I don't really seem to understand exactly what each version does. And so I wind up coming out with a lot of unpredictable results, and that's some of the reason why I haven't been working on the Sci-Fi Warrior mouse image. I do not consider that image finished. I like how it's turning out. It's just, it'll be a little while till I revisit it. I need to learn a little bit more about Affinity Photo before I go about tackling that. Not only that, but it's getting pretty RAM heavy for my computer, and my computer's not the most amazing piece of hardware in the world, so it's just, step by step, I need to learn a little bit more about Affinity Photo, and I need to get a better computer. But more about this image and such like that, and everything that's going on with this collaboration. Last week's video didn't really perform very well, unfortunately, which I think the main reason is because people weren't expecting to hear Draconian Rain's voice. They were expecting to hear my voice, and so there might have been some brand confusion or something like that. But here I am coloring it, so you were on the right channel, and yes, you are subscribed to the right channel here. I mean, this is me. This isn't a deliberate thing. I mean, I really want to make this image look really good as I'm coloring it. When I do a collaboration, I have the primary goal to do the best work that I can and to come out with a work of art. I see a lot of art channels right now doing some really stupid stuff where they get together and they joke around, they giggle, and by the time that they're done, they come out with some scribbles, and it's not even entertaining, and it doesn't come out with any artwork. Like, there's nothing that you can really admire out of the collaboration. It's just a bunch of people giggling and stuff like that. I don't really think of my channel as just a entertainment channel. I don't consider myself much of an entertainer. I wish I was. I'm not really the sort of guy that people go to and like, hey man, you're the hype man, whoop whoop. There's nothing like that. I'm not that guy. So I'm focusing on my passion, which is art and not entertainment. Hopefully my videos somehow managed, just by mistake, I guess, to be entertaining enough for people to subscribe. Anyways, so Draconian Rain actually has one of my videos on her channel, the same way that I have one of her videos on my channel, last week's video. Okay? So stay tuned on her channel because she's coloring the image that I drew on her channel. So I'm going to have a link in the video description below, not only to her channel, but also to my video that's on her channel. So seriously, stay tuned, because she's doing a really good job. I think I saw either the finished version of her coloring work of my image, or if it wasn't finished, it was close to being finished, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Now, I am working with Affinity Designer. I've already mentioned that, but the reason why I'm repeating it is because I learned Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, but Adobe Illustrator I have a lot less practice with, and I wound up forgetting most of what I learned with Illustrator. And so I really need to actually buckle down and actually learn a high-powered vector image graphics sort of program. And, I have one. It's Affinity Designer, and so I need to actually buckle down and start using it, and this is the best opportunity to do it. If I can make this image look amazing, then awesome. Now, I do think that there's going to come a point where I'm going to use it in concert with Affinity Photo to some extent, applying filters and stuff like that. Now, Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer files, they are compatible with one another. And so, whatever happens to be in vectors and such like that will render perfectly as vectors inside of Affinity Photo. And so I want to take as much advantage of that as humanly possible. But that's just going to be right at the very tail end of the collaboration. Now, this collaboration is going to last a little bit longer than what I thought it was going to last for, primarily because there is no image trace feature inside of Affinity Designer. There is an image trace feature inside of Inkscape, but the problem with Inkscape is they don't have a loading screen, progress bar, or anything like that on Inkscape. And so when I tried to do the image trace for this image, it just gave me a warning pop-up, and it just loaded for hours and hours, and it never finished. And so I kind of think that Inkscape did exactly what I always expect it to do, nothing. And so I tried some alternative techniques to try to do an image trace on the line work that Draconian Rain went ahead and supplied here. And the problem is that every time that I would try to find some sort of free option to do image tracing, it would wind up tampering with the line work. I told Draconian Rain about that, and she offered to use some of her software to do an image trace. But the thing is I just don't feel comfortable with that. After having gone through the lengthy experience of trying to do an image trace, it wound up tampering with the line work every single time, and I don't think that the line work needs any adjustment. The image is just fine the way it is, and I should just accept it for what it is. Even though it's a raster image inside of a vector image program, I just need to accept that and such like that, even though it wound up making a lot more work for me. If this was inside of a raster program like Affinity Photo, I could just go ahead and use the fill tool and just fill in really quickly what my flats are. However, since I'm using a vector program and this is a raster that I'm having to fill, I have to use the pen tool to manually do it. So this took forever. This took 2 weeks for me to do this video. And I'm still not quite finished with doing all of the flats. I would say that I'm about 95% finished with the flats, but I've made some dang good progress on this image so far. And so what you guys will be able to look forward to with this image in the future is eventually when I come back and revisit this, which I'm thinking somewhat in the near future, I will be applying gradients, I will be applying glow effects, and I will also use the raster persona and then eventually put it into Affinity Photo for filters and such like that to improve upon the color palette and stuff to make it look like more colors were used than there actually were in the painting process. So that's my thought process and all that. Now, since I am new with vectors, I made a bunch of decisions that I'm sure I'm going to regret in this process of laying down my flats and all that. But, I'm okay with that because the thing is if you're not willing to break a few eggs, you're not going to make an omelet. I don't know if I said that properly. I know that is a common phrase and such, but you guys get the point. You know what phrase I'm trying to go for here. So, there's so many different little objects going on inside of this image. It really did take forever. Jellyfish have all these little tiny strands that kind of float about, and each one can be composed of 5 or 6 different little images, and every time that an object overlays over another one, sometimes I wound up having to make 2 different images out of those 2 segments and such like that. And earlier on, I was just merging everything into one object, but as I have been looking back on that decision, I've been thinking, wow, that's the thing that I'm going to wind up regretting, because as I start applying gradients and such like that, it's going to wind up applying the gradient to one gigantic object rather than all these variously different folds and such like that. So, yeah, I made this so that it's going to take a lot more work than what is typically expected out of the process of working on an image, but you know, it's part of the learning process. You have to be willing to screw up in order to learn how to work a program with an effective workflow. That's just the ebb and flow of learning how to use a new program. You have to get used to how everything works, and that's it. So yeah, the vectors and such like that, it's not so that I could blow up this image to being like 1,000 times its size or anything like that, because the line work is rasters. It's primarily just so that I have the flexibility to change the colors anytime I wanted to, if I wanted to. And now, I know that I'm just kind of ranting a little bit and without a little bit of focus, but I kind of want to talk about Draconian Rain. She's got a really nice demeanor online. We've been talking for almost the entire time that I've been on YouTube, and it's just been a pleasant experience having conversations with her. Sometimes I just set time aside to just speak with her. She's kind of become a bit of a friend that I happen to have online, and you know, I don't know, I'm a bit of a hermit. I do things usually by myself. I don't really enjoy social events, having massive amounts of conversation with people, and such like that. So, you know, where I'm able to find somebody that I actually want to set time aside to be able to have a conversation with, you know, I guess with a lack of a better term that's coming off the top of my head, it's kind of a blessing to have that. So she's a really good stand-up person, and if there's anybody that deserves to make it, it's her. Especially with her artwork and such like that. I hope she always continues to pursue her desire to make appealing images and such like that. Her artwork reminds me a lot of the artwork that my sister did back in high school. Her work was it just had this interesting quality to it, and you know, I never had any opportunity to collaborate with my sister, and so to be able to collaborate with her and her art style, it kind of feels like something special, you know. Now, I don't think of her as my sister. I know she's a completely different person and such like that, but you know, even still, her art style has the clean lines and all that, and the actual subject matter is the exact sort of subject matter that my sister, back when she was in high school, would have loved. So pretty soon here, you're going to be able to see the before image, how the image wound up coming to me in its original state, and just it all by itself is a standalone image that you could totally accept as a final product right here on the screen right now. At first, when I saw it, before even watching the video that she made for me to be posted on my channel, I had no idea what the heck I was looking at, really, in terms of what needed to be colored and what didn't. And so I was a little overwhelmed, but after having watched her video, things started to make a lot more sense. Sometimes when you just see how the drawing was made, you're able to kind of make sense of things a little bit. So this is how the picture looks now that I'm done with the video. You can see that there's a jellyfish that's 100% unfinished with the coloring process, and one that's mostly done, being finished, and everything else has their flats applied to them. As stated earlier, this is not the finished product, but I do look forward to coming back to this image in order to get it finished and polished and all that good stuff. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to click on the bell. And if you guys would like to take a look at more of my content, feel free to click on any of the videos that are appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.